Hello friends, and let's get started.
Ethan and Sophia lived in sunny Savannah, Georgia, where life felt draped in southern charm and endless possibility. Yet their domestic bliss had begun to wilt under the weight of the daily grind. After 10 years of marriage, they both felt that the spark, the one that used to burn so bright in their early days, had gone dim. Sophia, with her restless craving for novelty and change, had spent weeks mulling over how to inject some heat back into their relationship. One evening, as the humid Georgia twilight settled over the city and the soft glow of the street lamps began to illuminate the quiet, moss-draped streets, Sophia reached her breaking point. She decided, "I'm done with this autopilot mode." She walked over to Ethan, who was sitting in the living room, hunched over his MacBook, scrolling through spreadsheets and quarterly goals for his firm. His face was a mask of exhaustion, his eyes distant. But tonight, Sophia was not going to let the status quo win. "Ethan," she began, her voice low but steady, "what if we tried something a little out of the box? I think we need to stir things up, maybe light a fire under us. Think about it, a boudoir photo shoot. I really feel like it could help us find that passion we kind of let slip through our fingers." Ethan knit his brows, looking skeptical. He'd always been a bit of a traditionalist when it came to their private life. How is a camera supposed to fix us? He wondered. But looking into Sophia's wide, hopeful eyes, he saw that she genuinely believed in this experiment. There was a flicker of something alluring in her gaze, and he found himself wanting to believe that even now, with their flame flickering out, they could find the light that once defined them. "All right," he agreed softly. "If this is what you really want, let us do it." Sophia did not waste a second. She booked a photographer she'd followed on Instagram for years, Lucas. She told herself it was strictly because of his talent, but a small, buried part of her wanted to see if Ethan was still capable of feeling protective. She kept their history a secret, rationalizing that their college romance was ancient history and that Lucas's professional it was exactly what they needed to see each other clearly again. The day of the shoot arrived. Ethan, feeling a knot of nerves in his stomach, decided to be a good sport. He drove them down to a trendy studio in a converted warehouse district of Savannah, where the air was thick with that creative professional vibe. A sense of anticipation mingled with a growing dread. He could not shake the feeling that this was about to take a turn. When the heavy studio doors swung open, Ethan stepped into a massive, airy space where soft light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows onto carefully curated sets. Behind the camera sat Lucas, a charismatic guy with a confident posture and sharp, piercing eyes. The second Ethan locked eyes with him, his heart skipped a beat. The photographer's face was hauntingly familiar. Flashes of old stories Sophia had told him about the one before raced through his mind. Ethan fought to keep his cool, even as an absolute storm of emotions started brewing inside him. He watched Lucas work, noticing the casual, almost flirty way he directed Sophia. The photographer was making comments that felt way too personal, praising her smile, the curve of her waist, and even the subtle shift in her expression. Sophia, though seemingly flustered by the attention, did not pull back. Her eyes were bright with a mix of excitement and old memories. In that moment, Ethan felt like he was just a prop in someone else's play. He was sitting in the audience, watching a scene where his role had been pushed to the background. His chest tightened with bitterness and a mounting sense of jealousy, but he masked it well, leaning back and pretending to be casually interested in the process. Every move Lucas made, every inside joke, and every light touch on Sophia's arm to adjust her pose only fueled Ethan's feeling that he was the odd man out in this game. The tension in the room was electric, but Ethan kept his poker face on. Instead of exploding, he observed, he analyzed, trying to figure out exactly what was happening behind every look they shared. When they finally got back to their house, Ethan could not shake the experience. He played back every detail in his head, trying to rationalize what he'd seen. His jealousy and hurt were tied up in a feeling of total powerlessness. But soon, a cold clarity took over. Blowing up or picking a fight was not the move. Instead, Ethan started doing some quiet digging, checking mutual tags on social media. That's how he found out Lucas had a wife, Ava. She was a beautiful woman, but in her photos, the light in her eyes seemed to have faded. She looked like she was drifting through her own life, maybe dreaming of something more than what she had. That intel sparked a new idea in Ethan. If Lucas had stepped into Sophia's past, maybe Ethan could reclaim some control by playing a little game of his own. He decided to start subtly flirting with Ava. Nothing scandalous, just enough to show her some real attention. If he could wake up the feelings she clearly lost, he might just trigger Lucas's jealousy and force Sophia to rethink her own priorities. The next day, when Ethan coincidentally ended up at the same boutique coffee shop Ava frequented, he did not miss his shot. It started off innocent, a warm smile, a friendly "how's it going?" a quick chat about the weather. But gradually, Ethan started giving her more of his focus, asking about her life, her day, her interests. He listened with genuine intensity, making her feel seen in a way she probably had not been in years. Ethan was acting with ice-cold calculation. He knew the goal was to stir the pot and make everyone realize something was fundamentally broken. He began to openly admire Ava. During their run-ins at the cafe or short sidewalk chats, he'd compliment her style or how she found joy in the little things, acting genuinely impressed by her perspective on life. Every gesture was tactical. He wanted Ava, Lucas, and especially Sophia to see that his interest was not just a fluke. Sophia watched this unfold with a growing sense of discomfort. She tried to pinpoint what exactly had flipped the switch in her husband. Had she messed up by thinking the photo shoot was a simple fix? Or had her carefully laid plans spiraled completely out of her hands? The answers were a blur, and a heavy sense of anxiety began to take root in her heart. Meanwhile, Lucas stayed busy at his studio, completely oblivious to the chess match Ethan was playing. He was buried in post-production work, obsessing over lighting and color grading to create the perfect vibe for his clients, never suspecting that his personal life was about to hit a wall. As the days blurred together, Ethan's gamble grew increasingly dangerous. He and Ava began spending more time together. What started as accidental run-ins evolved into long, deep conversations laced with a subtle flirtatiousness that was becoming impossible to ignore. They met all over Savannah, taking long walks along the River Street waterfront, grabbing lattes at cozy spots in the Starland district, or even just crossing paths by chance near the office buildings downtown. Every one of those meetings added fuel to the fire. Lucas, despite his heavy workload, started noticing that Ava was becoming distant, like she was checked out of their life together. One night, coming home late from drinks with some fellow creatives, he spotted Ava and Ethan standing outside a small bistro. The way they were looking at each other, a look heavy with unsaid things and a spark of something intense, made his stomach drop. It was a cold realization. Something was seriously wrong. At the same time, Sophia was spiraling. Watching her husband's behavior, she felt a gnawing sense of dread. She saw the way Ethan's eyes lit up when he talked about some detail he'd discussed with Ava, and how their friendship was clearly turning into something way more personal. A bitter sense of betrayal took root in her soul, even though she could not quite put her finger on where she'd gone wrong. Maybe her brilliant idea for a boudoir shoot had been the spark that set the whole house on fire? Both couples were pushed to the edge. Internal conflicts were reaching a boiling point in both households, where feelings long buried under layers of polite, "How was your day?" conversations began to explode with a destructive force. Ethan doubled down on his game, refusing to admit to himself how much that day in the studio had actually hurt him. He convinced himself he could fix everything by reclaiming the upper hand, using jealousy as a tool to shock his marriage back into some kind of stability. But in the world of human messiness, there are no clean solutions. Ava seemed to be genuinely opening up to Ethan. Her tone grew warmer, her smiles more authentic. Every time they met, it served as a reminder that her life could be different, brighter, more exciting, if she just had the guts to step outside her comfort zone. And Ethan, seeing the way Ava's face glowed under his attention, found himself sinking deeper into the very role he was supposed to be faking. Lucas, meanwhile, was losing his grip on his sense of security. He kept trying to figure out where he'd dropped the ball. He felt Ava slipping through his fingers like water, and the realization brought not just jealousy, but a deep, aching pain. Everything came to a head on a decisive Friday night, when all their paths finally crossed. Ethan had unexpectedly snagged an invite to a dinner party hosted by mutual friends, And as it turned out, all four of them, Ethan, Sophia, Lucas, and Ava, were on the guest list. The atmosphere was thick enough to cut with a knife. Every person at that table knew that the tension bubbling under the surface could no longer be ignored. The restaurant was a sleek, modern spot with dim Edison bulbs and a lo-fi jazz playlist humming in the background. At first, the small talk followed the usual script: work, the weather, upcoming vacation plans. But gradually, the tone shifted. It was like everyone was just waiting for the moment they could finally blow off some steam and let the truth out. Ethan, his head spinning with a mix of spite and regret, decided to make his big move. He leaned in close to Ava, whispering something in her ear that made her let out a genuine, melodic laugh. He let his hand rest on the back of her chair, inches from her shoulder, creating an intimate bubble that completely excluded Lucas. It was a quiet move, but in the tense silence of the table, it felt like a shout. With a smooth motion, Ethan stood up and offered Ava his hand, leading her toward the small area cleared for dancing. The second they hit the floor, Lucas snapped. His face went pale, his eyes flashing with raw emotion. He let out a sharp exclamation that stopped the room cold and marched over to them, past caring about making a scene. At that point, the polite part of the evening was officially over. A total storm of accusations, low blows, and jealous outbursts filled the air. "What the hell is this, Ethan?" Lucas shouted, his voice cracking with rage. "You think you can just pull this crap with my wife?" Ava, shocked by the sudden confrontation, tried to get a word in, but the words died in her throat. Sophia, watching her world crumble in real time, stood up to try and to escalate the chaos, but she found herself swallowed up by the sheer intensity of the moment. I just wanted you to get it," she whispered to Ethan, her voice trembling as she fought back tears. "I wanted you to see that we forgot what it actually feels like to love each other." Ethan, his hands balled into fists, faced Lucas with a cold stare, though his eyes betrayed his own pain and confusion. "I did not want it to be like this, Lucas. I wanted you to feel it, too, but I did not think it would go this far." A heavy, suffocating silence fell over the room, broken only by the echoes of their shouting. Everyone there realized the moment of truth had arrived. All the secrets and the things they'd been afraid to say were out in the open, leaving nothing but raw, exposed hearts. The conversation quickly dissolved into a blur of mutual blaming. Lucas called Ethan a snake. Ethan threw it back at him, saying Lucas's marriage had been dead for years anyway. Ava tried to justify why she'd even entertained the attention, while Sophia, in a state of total despair, tried to explain that this all started as a desperate attempt to find their lost spark. But no amount of talking could quiet the screaming or mend the broken trust. Every person in this tragicomic mess was forced to look in the mirror. Lucas saw the crushing reality that his happy marriage was a house of cards. Ethan felt the conflict between wanting to win and realizing he'd started a game that had no winners. Ava, watching the storm rage around her, felt her own dreams of a better life turning to ash, while Sophia finally understood that everything she'd planned had turned into a complete catastrophe. As the storm of emotions finally ebbed, leaving behind only the hollow echoes of resentment and tears, everyone involved was forced to face the mirror of their own conscience. The night, stripped of its pretenses, had opened their eyes to the reality that behind this twisted game were real lives, real stakes, and real damage. Sophia was the first to break the heavy silence. Her voice was thin, but it did not waver. "Ethan," she said, finally meeting his eyes across the wreckage of the evening. "I messed up. I thought that photo shoot would be some kind of magic fix, but I never imagined it would push you to this. I wanted to bring back the heat, but it looks like the fire I started is just burning us down." Ethan looked down at the table, trying to swallow the lump of regret in his throat. He knew his retaliation had crossed a line he could not uncross, but he could not stay silent about why he did it. I just wanted you to feel what it was like," he started, his voice thick with emotion. "I wanted you to see that I was drowning in that same indifference. Maybe I was not ready for what I set in motion, but I needed you to feel that we'd lost our spark. I was desperate for you to notice me again, even if it was through something this toxic." Lucas, still visibly shaken and leaning against the wall for support, turned toward Ava. The anger had drained out of him, replaced by a raw, naked ache. "Ava," he said softly, "I know our marriage has not been a Hallmark movie lately. Maybe I was just blind, thinking that good enough was enough to keep us together. But I never wanted our mistakes to hurt people like this." Ava kept her head down, her voice barely a whisper. "Sometimes I just wanted to feel seen," she admitted. "To have someone actually hear me. I never intended to be part of some revenge plot. I felt you pulling away, Lucas, and I was just standing there, not knowing how to tell you that I was hurting too." The weight of their words hung in the humid Savannah air. Every person in the room knew this had moved way beyond a simple case of jealousy. Now they were staring down the barrel of a much harder question. Was there anything left to save, or was it time to call it? Ethan and Sophia sat side by side, physically exhausted. In the long silence that followed, there was more honesty than they'd shared in the last 5 years. They realized that their game had brought nothing but misery, but it had also forced them to see the truth, that a real marriage requires more than just a spark. It needs radical honesty, trust, and the guts to forgive. Lucas, watching his world fall apart in the dim light of the restaurant, realized his marriage could not go back to the way it was. He had to admit that their foundation was probably never as solid as he told himself. His pride was shot, and he knew the next move he made would decide the rest of his life. As for Ava, the attention she received from Ethan had served as a wake-up call. She realized she could not keep living a life that felt like a loop of the same gray day. The choice was now between staying in a comfortable kind of suffering or taking a terrifying leap toward something new. As the night finally took over and the last of the guests cleared out, both couples were left alone with the fallout. Ethan stared out the window at the flickering lights of downtown Savannah, wondering if you can ever truly patch up wounds this deep. He knew there was still a sliver of hope in his heart, that a love tested by this much fire might actually come out stronger on the other side. Sophia reached over and took his hand. Her eyes were sad, but there was a new kind of resolve there. She understood now that every mistake and every tear was part of a messy path they had to walk together. Maybe, just maybe, this was the only way they could finally understand each other. Back at their own house, Lucas and Ava sat in the shadows of their living room, searching for answers. Was this just a temporary breakdown, or were their lives permanently knotted up in pain? They were facing the ultimate crossroads. Keep clinging to a broken past, or step into a future that started with a clean slate. That night, under the bright Georgia stars, the lives of all four were woven into a complex pattern where every word and every look carried the weight of a life-altering decision. Ethan, Sophia, Lucas, and Ava were all forced to choose. Keep playing the game of spite, or try to salvage what they once called a family. In the end, each couple reached their own conclusion. For Ethan and Sophia, the storm was the ultimate stress test. They learned that love is a job, one that requires listening and compromise. Their relationship might never have that new car shine again, but now they had a foundation built on raw truth rather than polite silence. Lucas and Ava realized that love is not just about the big gestures. It's about the quiet, daily effort of showing up. Their road was not going to be easy, but this night of total exposure gave them a shot at a new kind of intimacy, one based on being real instead of being perfect. The story ended with a bittersweet aftertaste, the kind that eventually matures into new dreams. The fates of Ethan, Sophia, Lucas, and Ava would always be linked by this one chaotic night, a night where love and pain walked hand in hand, and where every mistake became a lesson in what it truly means to forgive.